I've been asked to tell just a piece of my story here this morning. And before I move on, let me introduce myself. My name is David. And some of you may know me as King David. And it's my honor and privilege to be asked by your pastors to share just a little bit of what I was able to experience here on this earth. Your pastors have been talking about my life the last few weeks, and they've been all right in that. It's true, I'm one of 8 boys and 2 sisters. I was the youngest, and so that means I was forgotten. I was asked by Dad to have that very, very important job of watching the sheep. And if you didn't know, sarcasm runs throughout all years here on this earth. I was not excited about being a shepherd, but that's the task that I had. Except for one day, my dad had requested me through a servant to come into his presence. He was having a meeting. And if I remember correctly, when I was out there tending the sheep, that it was an important meeting. It was with the prophet Samuel. And so I thought, wow, am I gonna actually get to meet this guy? And so I showed up in this room, and I thought I was going to be asked to go and kill a lamb or something for a meal later that afternoon, or to go draw some water. But as I walked into that room, the prophet Samuel said to my father Jesse, "Is this your son?" Just said, yeah. He says, "Well, have him walk past me." So my dad looked at me and said, "Do as he asks." And so I walked by this prophet of God, this spokesman of God I was within feet of. And just as I was right in front of him, he said, "Stop right there." And so I did, and he looked at me. And then he looked at my father. And I will never forget the words. He said, "Jesse, your son David, he will be the next king." My dad had this confused look. I don't know what kind of look I had, because I thought, wait a second, just a few minutes ago I was dealing with sheep poop. And now I'm going to be what? The next king? And then he anointed me with oil. And he said the words that ring true even as I stand here before you today, for not only my life at that moment, but for your life and wherever you're at today. He said, "Jesse, I have chosen your son, not because of what the world looks out, the outward, but I have chosen your son because of what God looks at. He looks at the heart." You know, I'd never been affirmed that way. As I told you, I was often forgotten. But in that moment, I felt so much worth and so much love. Well, I thought maybe they'd immediately go fit me for a robe or something, give me all the power and the throne. And, I had no idea what I'm supposed to do after this moment. And Dad sent me back out with the sheep. So I spent days and weeks out there just kind of thinking through all this. And I don't know, would you be like me, where I thought, maybe this was a dream. Maybe I just imagined all of this. Maybe I had heat stroke. Till one day, I was asked by my father to take some food to my brothers. Now, my brothers, they were warriors. They were battling the Philistines. And I could hear the noise of the battles from a distance. And I always wondered what it would be like. And Dad's saying, "I get to go." Now, Dad knows his son, and he says, "David, I want you to go take your brother's food, and you get out of there. You're not hanging around." I didn't care the rules. I was just excited to leave the sheep and get to go to see the battles. And when I showed up, it was bigger and crazier than I ever imagined. But there was this one guy, and you heard about him last week, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but he was a giant. He's 9 foot tall, and he was the Philistine champion, and his name was Goliath. And my brothers and all the other the military, they were afraid of this guy. And there was something in me that said, man, we can't just be breaking down and bowing down to this guy. God has saved me from a lion. He saved me from a bear. He can certainly save me from this guy. And then I thought, what in the world did I just say? You know the details. I told Saul, he thought I was crazy. I'd go up against this giant with a slingshot and a few smooth stones. One thing I knew throughout my life sitting on that hill tending sheep was that I can't, but God can. And so in that moment, I was able to take down this Philistine giant that everyone else was afraid of. Not because I had anything special about me, but it was who was in me that was special. I had a front row seat of watching the power of God. Isn't it awesome? When you have a front row seat to watch the power of God. So I went over there and I got me a trophy for my fireplace mantle. Okay, I didn't have a fireplace mantle, but I had Goliath's head. And I say that because when I had his head in my hand, there was a moment where I just felt like, you know what? To you, my brothers. And to Dad, who's just stuck me with the sheep, look it. And to God, thank you. And I felt like I was king of the hill, that I had arrived. Have you ever had that moment where you and God had done something and you're just like, yes, this is awesome. And that's where I was at. I felt invincible. And then I knew that I was going to probably put his head down and probably go back out to the sheep. I had no idea what God's plan was for me. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew who held my future. Well, like I said, I thought I was going to go back to tending sheep, and the king Saul, he said, no, I want you to shadow me. And I want you to hang out with me, and I'm going to give you different tasks and different responsibilities. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is happening. I get to hang out with King Saul, and this is going to be wonderful. And so I did, and it's crazy. I went from leading sheep to leading armies. Yeah, this guy. I went from leading sheep to leading armies. I was so disqualified for it, but again, God qualifies the unqualified. And that was me. I was way in over my head, and I experienced victory after victory after victory because God was with me. It was early on that I met a guy who would become my best friend. And I would learn the value of friendship and how important it is. His name's Jonathan. And ironically, he's Saul's son. And you would think, and if you knew history, I mean, he could be next in line to be king. This is kind of oftentimes how it was done. And so you would think Jonathan would actually be jealous of me. But instead, this guy was so absolutely amazing, and it spoke so much of his heart and the character of who he was that we just became immediate friends. We connected on so many different levels. And there was a trust that accumulated so early and so deep. And I wouldn't realize how important this friendship was until later. So everything's going great. I'm king, of the hill in the sense of Saul's invested in me, and I'm getting to do all these things that I never got to do before, and I'm having victory, and God is with me, and people are chanting this. They're going, Saul kills thousands, but David kills tens of thousands. And I'm like, yeah. But then it all started to turn. You know, I learned as I hung out with Saul that he was kind of crazy. You know, one minute he was one way, and then another minute he was an entirely different way. Do you know people like that? Are you that person? So I would play the lyre, musical instrument. It would calm his heart, and his craziness would wear down. One night I was playing right by my ear. I look behind me and there's a spear in the wall. I'm thinking, what in the world? Saul had decided to throw a spear in my direction. And I thought, oh, you know, little target practice, whatever. He kind of got close to me accidentally, whatever. Kept playing. Minutes later, another spear goes right by my ear. What in the world is going on? And I look up at him. And I wish I could have a picture of his face. His eyes looked right through me. The hair on his neck stood up. And you could just see anger written all over him. It was boiling out towards me. It was the first moment that I realized that Saul had an issue with me. He was jealous of me. And I think he wanted to kill me. So I go to Jonathan. I ran out of there and I'm like, Jonathan, your dad's crazy. Jonathan's like, yeah, he's telling me. No, Jonathan. I mean, literally, your dad's crazy. He tried to kill me. Jonathan's like, no. Yes. And I grabbed Jonathan's shoulders and I said, Jonathan, listen, your dad's trying to kill me. No, that can't be. Well, I'm shaken to death. I don't know what to do. And Jonathan says, hey, I got your back. He goes, I'll go talk to my dad. But know this, David, if my dad was trying to kill you, I would know. Because I know everything that my dad's going to do. So Jonathan goes to his dad and he's like, Dad, what are you doing? Dad's like, what are you talking about? He says, David thinks you're trying to kill him. What? Me? Kill David? Why? Well, I didn't think so. And Saul goes, I wouldn't kill David. Can I have your word on that, Dad? Yeah. Of course. Comes back to David. David, don't worry about it. Dad says he's not going to kill you. Now here's what I would ask you. What would you think? Like you lived those spears going right by your ear. And more importantly than those spears going by your ear, I saw it in his face. He was livid. But do I trust my new friend, Jonathan? What would you do? A few days go by and I get that other side of Saul, and Saul's like, hey, David, you're such a good guy, man. I want you to marry one of my daughters. Now, I'm going to confess to something, you know. Maybe, hopefully, you could relate. You know, you have those moments that are strong and weak. I'm like looking at this daughter going, no way in heck. She's ugly. And she's mean. She's like a female version of you, Saul. And I said no, and he was ticked. And I thought, oh, gosh. There's a lot more to this, but later on he introduces to me another sister, Mika, and says, hey, I'd like to give you her hand in marriage. Now, again, being vulnerable, she was beautiful. And I was like, what do I do? And so I said yes. And so we get married. So not only am I learning from King Saul, and I'm supposed to be the next king, but now he is my father-in-law. And I'm thinking, he's my father-in-law. He's got my back now. Things are all going to be good. I've got his daughter. He loves his daughter. I could relax, right? Well, not so right. Jonathan comes running to me one day and says, I got some news for you, David. I think my dad does want you dead. What? Now, do you see the roller coaster that I'm going through? What would you feel? What would you experience? What would you think as you're walking through all of this? And in this process going, God, what in the world is happening? I'm trying to follow you. I'm trying to lean into you. I'm trying to trust you. And you're going to have this guy that is going to chase me down and kill me? This was the beginning of a lot of darkness for me. This was the beginning of a lot of confusion. I don't know how to best say it, but I felt like God had my back, but he didn't have my heart. He had my back, but he didn't have my heart. Why? Because I was struggling. I was struggling with, do I really fully engage with what you want from me, God? Do I really fully engage with who you are? Do I trust what you're saying? Because right now I'm not feeling it. Right now I'm not happy with you. I actually would rather be back on the hill watching sheep than dealing with the abandonment that I'm feeling right now. The darkness that I'm feeling right now. The hurt that I'm feeling right now. You know, in your book, the Bible, one of the books, Psalms, you'll see a lot of my writings. You'll see a lot of my emotions and some of the wrestlings that I had with my God and my Creator. Now, let me tell you, I love him to death. And when the Bible says David is a man after God's own heart, I'm really humbled by that, because the truth is I had some struggles. And part of me sharing with you today is I hope you understand that if you have struggles in your faith, that's okay too. We just got to keep pressing. I want to share with you one of the things I wrote during this time of great fear. And actually great disappointment with God and struggling with my own pain and my own confusion. You guys have it down as Psalm 6. I just have it down as a dark night with a lot of stars shining. But they weren't shining in my heart at the moment I wrote this. Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your wrath. Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am faint. Can I pause right there and ask you, have you ever had that moment in your life? Are you living that moment right now? My heart goes out to you. Because even as I read this, it brings so much pain back to my mind. I said, heal me, Lord. Heal me, Lord. For my bones, they're in agony. My soul is deep in anguish. How long, Lord? How long? Turn, Lord. Deliver me. Save me because of your unfailing love. I remember penning these words right here. Among the dead, no one proclaims your name. Who praises you from the grave? I am worn out from groaning. All night long, I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. My eyes grow weak with sorrow. They fail. They fell because of all of my foes. In some ways, I'm embarrassed to share that with you because it was an incredibly weak time in my life. But I share it with you because I've got to think that someone out there gets what I wrote. Someone out there may be feeling those same exact feelings here. And I want you to know that that doesn't make you a bad person. But I also want to let you know that as your bones agonize, I believe your Father in heaven agonizes with you. From having Goliath's head and feeling like I was on the top of the world to being like a scared little baby. My wife, she was strong for me. And again, she was in a weird position, just like Jonathan. But here's my wife. This is her father. So I've got Jonathan and my wife that love me to death, and yet they have the tension that they have to deal with their father's jealousy towards me. And Jonathan constantly having my back and telling me, I will do whatever it is that you want, David. And my wife, another moment, we're laying in bed, and I'm feeling exactly what I just read to you. I just want to throw up. And she rolls over and she puts her hand on my face and she said, honey, I need to tell you something. Dad wants to kill you. And here I thought I was safe, and my own wife is saying, Dad wants. As a matter of fact, he's got some of his men standing outside the house right now, and more are coming. Before you know it, we'll be completely surrounded. And so we found one of these idols, and we placed it in the bed and put some goat hair on it to make it look like it was me and the blanket over it to buy some time. And then God gave me the courage, and he gave me the strength and the wisdom to exit outside one of the windows where the men had not been yet. Now, again, can I be completely honest? At that moment in my life, I really wanted to just stay in bed. I just wanted to put the covers over my head and said, just kill me, Saul. Kill me. Because this is not the life I signed up for, God. I don't deserve this. I can't do this. Sound familiar? When you can't, when I can't, he can. So somehow I got the courage and I got the strength and I got the wisdom and I escaped out of the window. And I remember that night I'm just running in complete darkness, running nowhere, having no idea where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. But I knew I had to get out of Dodge. The Lord led me to the prophet Samuel's place. And there I shared everything that I had been experiencing with Saul and the craziness of this. And now in hindsight, I look back and Samuel probably just sat there like, yep, yeah. People should never have cried out for a king. Yep, now you know what I dealt with. But Samuel wasn't that way. He listened. We talked. I'm not going to get into all the details of what happened there, but the next step was to go find Jonathan. And I ran to Jonathan, and I just remember sitting and looking at him saying, Jonathan, tell me, what did I do to tick off your father? Why is he so mad? Jonathan just kept shaking his head. He knew. He was raised by Saul. That was his dad. Filled with anger, filled with pride, turned away from the Lord. See, that's the only difference between Saul and I. Truth is, he was a greater warrior. I think he had a smarter mind. Military, he was way more educated than me. But he said no to God. And so this is what Jonathan reminded me of. And he said, you did nothing, David. Again, David, I will do anything I can. I went to my dad and I called him out. I told him that there was nothing wrong with you, David. I told him that he's ridiculous and out of his mind. I went toe-to-toe with my own father for you, David. There's nothing more I could do. But you know what? I think he's calmed down. And I said, Jonathan, he has not calmed down. He was ready to take my head at home with your sister. I don't know what to do. So we talked some more, and I realized that Saul was expecting me at a feast the next day, the new moon feast. And I was supposed to sit there at the table with him, and I told Jonathan, I'm not going to show up, and here's what we're going to do. I want to see how your dad responds to me not showing up. So you make sure you're within the close vicinity of your father. And when he realizes I'm not there and you make a comment about it, I want you to see how he responds. And if he responds in anger, then he's still upset with me and he still wants my head. But if he's just like, no big deal, then maybe he's softened. Jonathan's like, all right, I guess we could do this. And he goes, all right, but how are we going to communicate this? And Jonathan came up with this idea. We went out to the field and he sees that big rock over there, that really, really big rock over there in the field. He said, after the feast, I want you hiding behind that rock. And I was like, okay, you've watched too many weird TV shows here, even though there wasn't TV back then. And he goes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little boy, and in the morning, I'm going to shoot 3 arrows. And if I shoot them to where they just kind of land on the side of the rock, then that means Dad's good to go. He's not upset, and you're safe, and you can show your face. He goes, but if I shoot them over, he goes, then we got a problem. And that allows you to know that you got to get out of here. And so they made this plan, and they prayed, and they cried, and everything was good. Me and him. And so that day came, and I wasn't there. And this is what Jonathan would tell me later. Dad was like, where's David? And I don't know. He's not here. He had other things to do. He was livid. The next day, not there. Where is David? Not here. He boiled over, threw a big fit, and said, find that guy. We're going to kill him. So Jonathan tells me he goes out the next day, and sure enough, I'm hiding behind the rock. I'm anticipating what is going on. This whole time, I'm still begging God, why? What happened to that victory that I had with Goliath? What happened to you taking me from being a leader of sheep to leader of people? What happened to me being the next anointed king? Why, God? Just what is going on? And sure enough, I see the arrows, and they're not landing by the side of the rock. They're shooting right over me. The little boy goes running out, and I hear Jonathan scream, run, get out of here now, quickly. My heart is racing. I'm struggling again of wanting to just lay myself on that rock and just say, take me now. But instead, again, I get this courage, and I start running, and I'm running. And the little boy comes, picks up the arrows. I watch Jonathan. Jonathan sends the boy away. And the next thing you know, there is David, me, and Jonathan. I get choked up. We cried for hours. We cried for hours as he held me and said, I'm so sorry for my father. I'm so sorry for what you've had to go through. And Jonathan looked me in the eyes and said, I don't know if we're going to ever see each other again. But God has our back. God has our back. What I've just shared with you comes out of 1 Samuel, chapter 18, 19, and 20. My encouragement to you is to go home and read that and see how much I botched up those verses or how much I might have been right on. It's a beautiful story, but it's also an ugly story, isn't it? The beauty is of God's faithfulness. The beauty is of God providing for David a wonderful friendship. But the ugly is the pain. Can I be really honest with you? That psalm that I read, that breaks my heart. When you talk about your bones, feel the pain of agony. You know why that breaks my heart? Because I've experienced that. Because many of you have experienced that. You've experienced the front row seat of God, and you've also experienced the where in the heck are you, God moments. There's so much to pull from these 3 chapters, but what I've chosen to pull on this Family Sunday is this. There's nothing like a friend. God knew that David needed a close friend to walk with him through the ups and downs of his life. And I would go as far as to argue that I don't think David would have been able to make it through all of this without Jonathan. Personal opinion. And with that, I would say this. You and I can't make it through this life without people alongside of us. We are created in God's image. And part of that is we have the DNA of relationship. Now, man, let's just be honest. We kind of like to skip that, don't we? We like to say, I don't need nobody. I could do it on my what? Own. Men and women, we need one another. And may I even be more specific, we need that close friend or those close friends. And so what I choose to pull from this passage today is this whole idea of nothing like a friend. And I want to share with you that I think there's 4 characteristics of an intimate friend or a close friend that we could draw from this passage. And I'm going to quickly go through them. Take notes, write this down. A friend is willing to sacrifice. If you go to 1 Samuel 18:4, it says, Jonathan took off his robe he was wearing and gave it to David along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. You see, friends sacrifice. In this case, it was possessions, right? Sacrifice possessions. But we also know a friend is willing to sacrifice his or her ears, right? Listening. We see David and Jonathan doing this often throughout 1 Samuel. A friend is also willing to sacrifice time. Again, it's not always resources, but I think we can learn from this that not only is this the kind of friend that we need, but can I flip that around a little bit? This is also the kind of friend we ought to be. Amen? We ought to be friends that are willing to sacrifice, especially as Christ followers. The second characteristic is this: a friend has your back. If you look at 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 4, it says, Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father and said to him, let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you, and what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all of Israel, and you saw it, and you were glad, Dad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason? I mean, that's pretty risky, isn't it? If you know how whacked out and crazy Saul is, for his son to go up to him and stand up for David and say, Dad, you are wrong on this. I love you, but you are wrong. I'll tell you, there's nothing better than a friend that has your back. Our backs are exposed. And we need friends that got our backs. You know what I love about the team I'm on here at West Valley Christian? You know, in the world, you'd call them your staff. They're my team. And you know what I could say with 100% confidence? My team has my back. And you know what my staff could say? Rob Denton has my back. Because ministry can be hard, and we've got to have each other's back. Now, let's talk in the context of the church here. We need to have each other's back, amen? I don't know about you, but the Bible says there's a battle going on out there. It's for good and evil, and it's for man's heart, for man's soul. And if we spend time in the church stabbing each other in the back, then the devil has won. A friend is willing to sacrifice, and a friend is willing to have your back. And by the way, can I just tell you how awesome our elders are? I'm consulting with 3 churches right now, kind of helping them through some issues. 2 of the 3, the major problems is because they have elders issues. And then the other one is because they have a staff issue. And I'm just so grateful that God has blessed us with an eldership that is incredibly gifted and compassionate and has my back, and vice versa. Third thing, characteristic, is a friend allows you to be you. That might seem weird to you, but I love my friends that allow me to be Rob Denton, because this guy's weird. And I've hung out with some of you. You're weird too. And isn't it cool just to have that friend that you could just hang out with and just be you? And I look at David and Jonathan's relationship, and when all that craziness happened and they were going to say their goodbye to each other, you look at chapter 20, verse 41, it says, "Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most." You know us guys, we don't share our emotions, especially with another guy. But here's David that's able to just throw it out there and just weep like a baby and say, "This sucks." You know, a friend allows you to be you. And lastly, a friend encourages. If you were to go to 1 Samuel 23, verses 15 and 16, you're going to see again, Jonathan comes to David when David's weak and he's afraid, and he says, "David, you got this. You will be the next king. I know it. My dad knows it. Everything's going to be fine." You know what I need? I need those friends that will come alongside of me when I am weak, when I am sucked dry of hope, and breathe hope into my life. Not only do I need that friend in my life, I need to be that friend. These are 4 amazing characteristics, amen, of what a friend is. Pray for that kind of friend in your life. Thank God if you have that friend in your life, and be that friend in your life. And I'll close with this. I can't help but to say Jesus is that. Look at that. Willing to sacrifice. What did Jesus do? He gave his life so that I may be forgiven and have life. Jesus has my back. Church, Jesus has your back. When the devil wants to talk trash about you, Jesus steps in and says, that is a child of God. He allows you to be you. You know what's wonderful, what we say here at the church? You come as you are. Don't get all cleaned up out there, because it ain't going to happen. You just come in here all dirty. You come to the cross as you are, and Jesus does the rest. I'm so glad that Jesus doesn't say, "Oh, get away from me, Rob. You're all filthy." And lastly, he encourages me. And he encourages you to be the best version of you. Amen.